What's up, HBO fans? The time now has come for the season finale of Lovecraft Country Season 1. Now, we did a non-spoiler review for this episode 1. So, we'll be putting down the link on the description box below for those who haven't seen yet the entire season. But I welcome back to the channel, Carlos Laron.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. You know what? It's funny because I remember us talking about episode 1 and me dishing out the plot line for this season, not knowing that it's going to be the plot line for episode 1.
Right.
And it has been really a hell of a ride.
It was.
So much has happened. For those who are still here, we are going to give first our non-spoiler whole assessment for the whole season.
Okay, so from the first episode, I thought that was the starting point of the story, and it will be like a normal narrative of Tick finding his father. I thought it was gonna be a journey, and it was a journey, but it branched off to different storylines. I didn't expect that, and we got to meet a lot of characters. In terms of where I thought the story would go, I thought there'd be more literal monsters throughout the season, to be honest. But you know what we got was a variety of actual significant historical events that were brought about by racism, which is actually the true horror of this show, right? Atticus was the lead, but the show didn't limit the narrative to just his experience. Every episode after the second focused on another new character, basically, most of which are female characters, right? That was like a good touch to it. We had episodes for Ruby, for Hippolyta, for Dianna, for Jada. All of them were essential to what transpired in the season finale. So it definitely lived up and beyond for me.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that really surprised me, same with you, is the structure. Early on, the first few episodes, there's a certain lore that the show brings, and then later on, it becomes a character-driven show that some of the characters that we deem to be minor and background characters for episode 1, they eventually take the spotlight.
Yes.
When it comes to the lore, I also expected more monsters, to be honest. But then it becomes a trip about history, and when it comes to showing films about racism, it doesn't limit on the black slavery.
Yeah.
We also touch on the Korean-American War.
Yeah, I thought it was very intersectional because we saw themes on gender, on nationality, and the historical period where a lot of things were happening before but now are still happening.
Yeah, for sure. And then a lot of literal and metaphorical monsters, then themes about white privilege, and then we got a whole flashback episode. It was wonderful. It kind of feels unorthodox. It sometimes feels uneven, especially when we got to episode 7, where the show has taken us to different landscape, but eventually, no matter how unexpected the show will bring each episode, it's going to be a golden hour of TV for me. Like, I would pay to see these episodes in a theater. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's true. Almost every episode was a short film, if you may. The structure with every episode, you can follow through easily. It was a great touch by the director and the writer.
It almost feels like I want to rewatch immediately the whole season.
Yes.
Because I think the coherence of each episodes will resurface more, I guess, if you revisit them. How would you rate this season?
This season, I would rate it a 4 out of 5. It's not perfect.
Okay.
From the first episode up until the 9th episode, I thought they were setting everything up in the right pace. Every story arc was explored, every relationship between the characters were formed in the right balance. Just a little bit let down on the final episode, but we will discuss that later. That I thought was rushed, but overall, after the credits rolled, I was pretty satisfied and wanting for more. So it's a 4 out of 5 for me.
Okay, so for me, I'm gonna give it a little bit higher, 4.5. I guess I am completely enamored by the performances and all the characters and how the show focused on its relationships. This is not easy. You're talking about putting lores that came out from different places, then to intertwine that with history, retaining the themes that's needed. I think it's an excellent hour of TV that I'm getting every week. Let's now proceed to the spoiler talk. I trust that anyone who's staying here have already seen the full season. We're going to talk first about the character arc of Atticus. From the beginning of the season, he's a very troubled character. He has a lot of unresolved relationships with his father who was missing. Then this relationship with Gia. That's why he is emotionally unavailable to anyone else, including Letty.
Yeah.
It's about him running away from his legacy, I guess, because it's at episode 2 that we find out that he is a descendant of Titus. Then eventually at the end of this season finale, he took it into himself to sacrifice. Now at that point that he has everything resolved around him.
From the very beginning, I saw someone who is resentful, his father, and it almost seemed like he didn't want to look for him, right? But through the help of Uncle George, who may or may not be his real father.
I think that is his father.
Yeah, I thought so too. But he died in episode 2, so that was sad.
No.
Yeah, it was real tragic. I didn't expect that. Yeah, with the help of his father and Letty, he set out on a mission and met Titus. We had William and we have Christina. Christina is his cousin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so somehow he managed to escape every motive that Christina had against him, because he knew right then that he was gonna be a sacrifice. Like Christina needed his blood, his life to gain immortality. So throughout the season, we see him battle, look for everything that could possibly save him, because he was doing it all for his family. There were episodes where we see him crying a lot, right? I got that he's a very emotional person. The show explains how he became the way he is. Someone who is vulnerable and someone who can break through and power through whatever family history he's given with. So yeah, I thought he was a very strong character.
Yeah, I actually felt his vulnerability even more in the episode 10, because he has a moment here where he got to finally meet his ancestor Hannah.
Yes.
And then Hannah mentioned something about taming the rage, which she has eventually passed on that magic to take. And then that moment that captured my heart the most is when he was finally reunited with his mom. At that moment, he seemed to be a kid. So that was like a symbolical moment for me, because he was looking for strength, for courage, then enlightenment to eventually embrace his faith.
Exactly.
And I think that's a wonderful moment, that to be in the presence of someone you can eventually put your guard down.
Yeah.
I think that's a good closure for Atticus. A lot of things has happened here. There is one thing that I am not certain if that is actually possible, because the ritual requires that you need to be one with Christina and Titus. So Atticus drinks Christina's blood, not knowing that it's not actually her blood. Then he eats the flesh of Titus, which is confusing for me, because episode 2 Titus succumbed to death, and then episode 10 he summoned him as a ghost. So in my head, is it really possible to offer a ghost? And yeah, but I think the show gets away with it because it's magic,
With the crazy things that they put out, almost every episode, it's because it's a pure work of fiction. So the magic is like limitless. We tend to just roll with it.
Yeah, because I was not expecting, honestly, from episode 1 that magic will play a large component here.
Exactly.
That eventually Tick was part of this ancestry full of witches and warlocks, and then he suddenly knows how to cast a spell. Like, all he is needed is this dream sequence. It kinda came fast. And also for the character of Letty, because she eventually became this custodian of the Book of Names.
I think we needed maybe a 90-minute episode for episode 10.
Let's talk about Letty.
Yeah.
Letty and his relationship with Atticus. They started as friends, then they stuck through together through all the challenges that were thrown upon them. And then at that final episode, they had this last romantic moment, was them getting baptized. And I think that's wonderful, because that moment was about Letty sharing her faith to Atticus, who is a non-believer. And I think that's a nice cap to the relationship that we have.
Exactly.
And eventually, Atticus is going to die. But, this is a show about magic and time travel, so anything can really happen.
I thought from the very start that they would eventually be romantic partners, but they were friends first. So the bond there is very strong to begin with. They have such contradicting personalities, but the love that they have for each other, kind of love until the end, where Atticus suffered his fate and Letty, fighting till the end with Christina to save him. That speaks a lot because for me as a viewer, I also accepted from like maybe episode 7 or 8 that, it's a possibility that Atticus would die. Like you said, anything can happen with the show. So the person that I thought would possibly save him was Letty. She gave Christina a big fight for it. I was at the edge of my seat, like with that battle.
Yeah, definitely. Letty is really a one top piece of a cookie, and not just on that season finale, because throughout the whole season she had a lot of badass moments, like talking about episode 1 when she sprinted to save their lives against that Shoggoth monster, then episode 3 where she picked up a baseball bat and faced all those white men who were honking their cars while they were partying. This character has been a good symbolism of female empowerment, and her being delegated to the role of Atticus' savior eventually makes sense. But let's talk about her relationship with Ruby. There's a wedge in their relationship, and it's revealed that Letty did not make it to the funeral of her mother because she was in prison.
Yeah, that revelation. It's like one of those relationships where two sisters are not so close with each other. The way that Ruby thought her mother was this strong, amazing woman, Letty did not share the same thought because she was away. She said that she was actually relieved, right? That she didn't even get to go to the funeral. With all the stuff that made her who she is, I thought that was just her way of coping with life's challenges. One thing that I thought was great in the story though was she and Ruby didn't drift away, even though they're just half sisters. They didn't become enemies because, Christina is in the way and Letty hates Christina. But I thought that was carried properly.
Yeah, eventually Ruby sided with her sister because she tried to get Christina's blood, to which she did not succeed. And let's talk about Ruby because do you think she's dead? I think she's just in comatose. Probably right. So Ruby here has a very complex and interesting relationship with Christina. It began on episode 5. She had sexual relationships with William, who's turned out to be Christina. But as the show goes on, it's kind of a will they, won't they? Are these two really liking each other? Maybe Christina had feelings for Ruby, but then Ruby, was she in there for the lust or just because she's getting this white privilege?
Somehow the feelings were real between Christina and Ruby, but at the end I thought that Ruby was playing Christina. Maybe she enjoyed it for a while, but ultimately her heart belongs to the family. Like the values that she has overpowered her desire to become a white woman.
It's kind of a mix between the two. Like she starts to gain feelings with Christina, although that relationship started from carnal attraction with William. It's kind of messed up actually if you're looking at it, but in the end she chose her family, but Christina was onto her, so she got her. Okay, so let's move on to Christina, another interesting character, because in episode 2 we found out that her quest for immortality really came from her need to prove her worth to her father because she was excluded in their meetings. Like she was supposed to be the heir, but she's a female, so it's all about getting back at them.
Until the episode 10, I thought there was some good in Christina. With all the challenges that she has been faced with as a woman in her family, I thought that somehow she would have a change of heart, but her ulterior motive against Tick proved stronger than anything. For me, she's 50-50. I saw somehow a redeeming factor. She did not truly hate black people, right? She seemed to be having a good relationship with them, with Letty and Hippolyta and everyone in Tick's family, but I guess that's how she was written. And the end, she was killed. I thought she kind of deserved it, to be honest. So
well, if you're going to look at it, she doesn't have really any established affinity for Tick, so I guess she's gonna go for it anyway. Let's move on to another character, Atticus' father, episode 9, when we go back to 1921 and finally know his roots.
That's a good episode.
I love that episode too. He's a closeted gay man that he struggled with his identity, especially when he's faced with the idea of being a father. So there's a line there that really touched me when he said to Atticus, like, I cut my soft parts for you just to be your father, because that's what men do. Men have sons. One of the relationships that get a polarizing view from my observation is how Atticus treated his father. Of course, he harbors this resentment and anger.
Montrose was very vulnerable, right? She was asking Tick to sympathize with him because they are learning both his history together when he was a kid, when they jumped to 1921. I saw Tick to be unforgiving in that moment, in that episode, because he was basically asking his father to stop the BS and help with me here so we can get the book of names. And it wasn't until that scene that you just told me, I wanted to be that father for you. I thought somehow that would get into Tick's head that he is his father, and I've hidden parts of me. The black people, they're not really receptive when someone is gay, right?
Yeah.
So Tick heard that and somehow he felt where his pain was coming from.
I think that they ended on good terms. Atticus eventually decided to sacrifice, and that in part is hiding this eventual outcome from Montrose, because Montrose won't allow his son to sacrifice for him. And I think that's a way of returning a favor, because now I already understood what you've been through. Past is past. We need to move on. Like, I have a son and you get a second shot on being a father, which is wonderful. Another character who has done a lot of time traveling this season is Hippolyta Freeman. She has this self-actualization arc.
That episode, I thought, was a moment of self-actualization and also self-empowerment, because her daughter Dianna looks up to her, and for her to be able to have that journey of going back in time where she met Josephine Baker in Paris to the other landscaper, she was an African warrior. Okay, why are they exploring this? But at the end, I thought, okay, she is wife of George and we need some sort of closure. It was a good moment to have. The blue hair that she has since episode 9, what do you think is the
Well,
symbol?
I think that's a symbol of a newfound self, because episode 7 was about getting her whole self a name, not just wife of George, that she is a discoverer, she is a scientist, she is many other things, that not because her race and gender, she won't be limited because of that. And I also think that it's wonderful that at the end of the day, she found herself to be grounded. I have witnessed all these amazing things, but in the end, I'm gonna go back to you, my daughter, but in this newfound presence that hopefully you will be accepting. It's not just on the literal sense of becoming something that your daughter dreams you to be, but it's also about showing her that anything is possible.
It's true. Not once in the series that they showed her to have some kind of other motive. She is also Tick's family friend. When you piece it together, every character is essential to the story, basically.
Then we have Dianna Freeman. I am really interested because the final shot of this season is her with his badass bionic arm crushing the throat of Christina, and then her being able to tame the Shoggoth monster, and there's a moon on the background. I felt like that's a villain shot. That's what I'm getting. Like, is this kid headed to the dark side? Because she mentioned to Christina something along the lines like, you people never learn. Like, what was that about? Was she talking about white men in general?
You know what? Same thoughts, because at the end I didn't expect that she would do that to Christina. I think it's all about her collective experience that, made her do it. I was questioning myself, like, is she a killer? Is she a murderer now? Maybe in season 2, if there is a season 2, she may well be going to the dark side. I think that that's possible. And Hippolyta will be like, oh no, what have we done?
That is something to look forward. But another character that I have touched who has been almost not present in this season, save for that episode 6, is Gia, and the Korean lore of the Kumiho was laid out and intertwined with the Korean-American War. What do you think about that episode and how she eventually became a Hondi member of this group?
They were exploring her backstory. I thought it was just gonna be a simple Korean girl in the midst of the Korean-American War, but wow, when it was revealed that she was actually a Kumiho, I was impressed, but also the amount of questions I had in that episode. Like, she fell in love with Tick, right? So it was possible for her to have feelings, even though she's just a monster. She had visions of Tick dying. So somehow, in the and she wanted to be there for him. So she made amends with him, and if it was gonna come true, her visions, she might as well give it a fighting chance to save Tick.
You know, I felt conflicted because episode 6, I love that episode as a standalone. It's about redefining what a monster means. That it doesn't really mean that if you're a monster, you need to succumb to your fate. But eventually in episode 10, in some way, really, she did succumb to her fate, but in service of stopping Christina. Because she literally became one with the darkness to connect these two people and perform that spell, stop Christina from gaining her immortality. I was just mixed on how they incorporated her story towards the end. Like, she's almost seems like a forgotten character. I had hoped that she was there from the early beginning, but the show is like a big bag of lore, history, and one thing that you can really claim is that this show is highly original with all the way it became creative with showing these concepts on screen. This is a no-brainer question, but do you want a second season and what do you expect?
Definitely, I would like a season 2. I will not be satisfied until we get a second season. I thought it was rushed, the finale, but it also served as a point of whether we'd like to see these characters more. Lovecraft Country, when somebody is dead, it doesn't always mean that they're gone, right? So
yeah,
we never know if Ruby is still there and Tick will, be reincarnated into some other characters. I really love the show. I'm glad that we reviewed it here in Screen Kings. I got you to become a fan, right?
I am really glad you recommended this show, and this is like a genre film. The possibilities that they have is endless. I've never seen this type of storytelling taken into a serial format, and it feels really exciting. And the way they set up the ending is they know that this show is gonna be a big hit, and rightfully so. It gained a cult following. I love how the show takes different artistic choices that sometimes it might not land favorably on the audience, but it continues to subvert your expectations.
One thing I'll say, it was never boring. It had all the elements of excitement and just the right amount of thrill and substance, basically.
And I would like to commend the showrunner Misha Green because she wrote most of these episodes and for bringing this concept into life. Yeah. So I guess that's it for our spoiler review for season finale of Lovecraft Country. Guys, let me know what you think in the comment sections. Carlos, thank you so much for guesting, and also if you like this video, give it a like and subscribe to Screen Kings for weekly reviews of movies, TV shows, and video games. Till then, see you on the next one.